Hello, hello, hello. Top of the morning, evening, afternoon, and good night to one and all. It is Monday, February 17th. How is everybody doing? Got a little bit of a headache, so I do apologize if I talk a little bit slower today than what I normally would, but I have some fun videos that I would like to go over with you guys. As always, for those of you that are new to this channel, basically what I do is I pull up videos that I think deserve a reaction. And my reaction is typically not that of far right or far left. It's usually somewhere in between. However, I will say this, and I want to point this out. Recently, I've been finding a lot of these far left channels that YouTube is recommending me because I watched that one individual we went over yesterday. Here's the thing, what I've noticed about far left, and I never experienced this because it was very difficult for me to find videos that were far left for whatever reason. They're just algorithms. I could watch 50 far left news channels, but getting actually recommended far left commentators like a Joe Rogan, but a far left one, is extremely difficult for me. But boy, oh boy, have I been getting a lot of those. And let me tell you one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of these people, they curse a lot. Like a lot. And drop an F-bomb at least every 2-3 sentences. And I have no idea why that is. I guess to try to get their point across, but oh man, is it difficult for me to watch. I'm not saying I'm some type of nerd or herb where I can't hear people curse because I was in the military. That's all people do. However, when I'm trying to listen to somebody prove their point or speak their point and it's just all curses, I immediately turn it off. It's very difficult for me to listen to. Not turn it off physically, turn it off mentally in my head. Basically, everything you say at this point, there's zero emotion attached to it. Because when I think of someone cursing, well, you're passionate about it. But if you're just talking about walking across the fucking street, that to me means nothing. That just, you don't know how to speak. You can't find... you could say anything without dropping an F-bomb, and it has the same level of severity without it. I was walking across the street. I was walking across the fucking street. They both have the subject, the verb, they have everything in it. You don't need to add that. And that's what I find. So finding things that I could share with you that are not that is quite difficult. It is. I am not hearing that soundbite. But that being said, let me look at this chat real quick. Thank you, Jenna, and thank you, Monkey. Thank you so much. So let's get into this, shall we? Because there are two things that I want to go over. I'm going to save the best for last, but let's talk about this first one. It is Sky News, but it's all over. This is the best one that I could find that had the most amount of J.D. Vance talking. Apparently, J.D. Vance went to Europe. He wanted to see what was really going on. You have all these people from America going to all these different countries trying to end the war in Russia and Ukraine. I don't know what that has to do with Vance going over to Europe, but that being said, let's get into it.
This conference, of course, to discuss security. And normally, we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team.
I want to put this out there too, is that you don't see, typically in history, you don't see vice presidents speaking. I'm not saying that they don't, right? And I'm not talking about just Kamala Harris. You could pick a vice president, Biden with Obama or Cheney with Bush. To see presidents speak as vice presidents is just not a thing. It's you're just somebody that doesn't really do much. You're just there for emotional support. You are the emotional support dog of the president. That's what your role is to, if some shit is about to pop off, you're the guy holding the door, right? Like that is what your role is. I hate to say it. I'm not saying it's not an important one, because even a bellhop at a hotel has got an important role. Someone's got to get their luggage. So it you know, in I'm bringing it down to a real low level. I'm just saying that when I think of a vice president, I think of somebody that's just, they have the role in case some shit's about to go down. That's basically what it is. So to see JD Vance out there, you know, hitting streets with his beard, good on you, man. Good on you.
We must do more than talk about democratic values. We must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither...
Pause this again real quick. I will say this, that JD Vance is setting himself up for success. When Trump gets out of office in 3 years, JD Vance will take that role. And I'm telling you, JD Vance as a president, just seeing what he's doing as a vice president, the way that he speaks, the way that he delivers remarks, they're punctual, they're to the point, and oh boy, do they go for the jugular.
Valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action.
Okay, let me pause that for a second. The countries he just spoke about, Belgium and Germany, when I think of freedom of speech, we're not the only country, America is not the only country in the world that has a freedom of speech. We are, I think, in a top 5 of people that can have freedom of speech and say basically whatever you want to say. Now, granted, saying it on the internet is tough because the country should not get involved with what is happening on a platform. It is publicly traded, but it's also like a privately owned company. The government can't go in and say, you know what, hey, man, you got to allow this. You have to allow this. No, we don't. No, we don't. Those constitutions, those amendments, they are your right, but they are your right against the government. They are not your right against the platform. And that is why they can censor you. if someone at Facebook or any of these platforms don't like what you have to say, they could just delete it. And I get it. People don't agree with that, and that's fine. And I don't know if it's fair for America to go over and then criticize those countries for what they do. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do. That's the glory of freedom of speech. The difference is that he's not in America. He's in Germany, and you're speaking your mind. Again, you're a vice president, so you're just going to wake people up out of the darkness and make them, I don't want to say rebel against what laws may be, but have a certain opinion that is against, well, the countries.
I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United States.
It makes me wonder if all these politicians that he's speaking to are taking heed to what he's saying. Like if they're actually listening, because you see it on news, you see it on TV, whatever, and they blow it up and they make it bigger than what it is. But him sitting there or standing there saying what he has to say in regards to freedom of speech, it kind of makes me emotional because how many of them are actually taking what he's saying? You know what? We need to change that. I'm in the position of power to actually change that. Let's change that.
United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person, but no. This last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizen suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation.
Was that the party, though? I remember specifically, yes, the Democrats doing that, but I also remember a certain point in time where Republicans were, okay, so if I say we don't want censorship, we don't, the left says, you know what, censor Facebook. The right says we don't want censorship. Both of those are a form of censorship. Both of them. Whether you want it or you don't want it, they're both censorship. It's just which one is worse than the other one. Okay, just let that sink in. They're both forms of censorship.
Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth.
That's true.
So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
Ooh.
This conference.
Wow. It really makes me wonder how many of those people that are listening are actually listening. You know, will they go back to the drawing board and fix what is broken? No, I don't think so. I'm sure that there are enough of people in all those countries that do not agree with what the current laws are, the freedom of the speeches, the social economic problems. I'm sure that there's people there. He brings up a valid point about censorship. I think censorship is such a huge argument because while I may not like what I see on the internet, I may say, take that down. Okay. So I'm asking them to censor it. But then at the same time, the right side or whatever, the opposing side that does not believe what I believe, say, don't censor that, leave that out. That's still censorship. No matter how you look at it, whether you want it down or you want it up, I think it should just be left alone. Just whatever happens, happens. And just don't pay attention to the internet. I can't tell you. I have a good buddy of mine. Good buddy. We're just going to call him M for lack of a better term. Actually, he's in the chat. I don't care. I have a good buddy, Matty. Now, what this guy does is he browses the internet, okay? And everything he sees, he believes to be factual evidence. There are transgenders outside of your house right now, Jay, protesting. You got to nip that in the bud. Oh my God, would you look at this over here? This is so crazy. If we don't get a hold of this, it's going to get out of control. I'm not saying he's a nervous Nelly. He just believes everything that he sees on the internet. He sees the kids on the internet, and this is where the kids are going today. Now, keep in mind that this gentleman has a teenager, so he can kind of see that facet or that side of teenagers and what they're going to be in the future. However, whatever he sees online overrules everything he sees in real life. Well, because he stays in his house a majority of the time. I'm not here to debate what that is. What I am here to debate is what's on the internet and what is real. I'm not saying that what happens on the internet is not real. I'm just saying that you should take it with a grain of salt, right? Or a grain of salt. Just because you see 5 people doing something does not mean 1,000 people are doing something. But if that's all that you see, then of course you're going to believe that that's all that there is because you don't see anything else. And I think that this is tough for me. I think that some social media platforms I don't feel like they should censor. I also think that there should be some limitations to what is allowed. My biggest thing is anonymity. I think being anonymous needs to go away. I do not think that should be allowed in any case of the form. Then now you hold people accountable and let them say whatever they want to say. That's it. That's everybody from both sides. There's zero anonymity. Zero. That means that if you go online, you have a check mark next to your face, you are verified. You can now post on Facebook. If you are not verified and you have a box for a name and one of those stupid AOL AIM default pictures from 1996 to deter that or to confirm that is you, that is unacceptable. You are not allowed to be on this platform. It is that simple, because if you start holding people accountable for the things that they say, the actions that they do, they'll be real quick to keep their mouth shut. We've seen it. You've seen it on the news. You've seen it on, the internet. You've seen it where people that play games. There was a recent one. I really can't speak about it because it's got to do with violent crimes, but you hear about these stories where some kid is talking shit on Fortnite or Call of Duty. You pick the game, and then old boy's on the other end, and he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, yep, sure. Uh, I see where you're at. Okay, I'm gonna come to your house now, and I'm gonna go do some shit." Now, I'm not saying that that's okay, but you think that kid, if his ID was out there, even at 14, 15, 13, if you're old enough to play a game online, you're old enough to be discovered in the real world. That's the end of that discussion right there. That is there's nothing else to discuss there. If your parents make the executive decision to allow you to play a game like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty and you're making racial slurs, making comments online, you're speaking your voice and you're being annoying, you should be held. There should be a little, you've seen it, like when you go on a Yelp or you go on a Google review, there's a there's Jay Hayes in Palm Coast, Florida, does a review on whatever, and it shows the location. When you're in Call of Duty talking shit and you light up next to your name shows exactly where you're at, and you can't run a VPN. Nope. Remove all of it. And I know what you're going to say is Privacy Act 1974. You're going to say, oh, everybody's entitled to their privacy. Well, everybody's entitled to peace, right? You play a game after work. It makes it sound like I really hate playing games online, right? The grown ass man playing games, getting beat up by 10-year-olds talking shit. No, it's really not that, because I'm not going to do anything stupid. I just think that if people are held accountable for more of their actions, well, they're going to be more likely to not say anything negative because they know that when they walk out of their house, someone might throw a frosty on them or a slushy. So I think it's holding more people accountable. But if you remove that, and a lot of people don't talk about this, they don't, because they feel that, I always have a hard time with this word, I do apologize. Anonymity, they feel like it's so important because, I don't know, I honestly, I don't know why it's important. I have somewhat of a, a very weak, mundane celebrity status online. I've had people come to my job and tell me that they were going to shoot me in the face. I've had people that have came to my job and threatened my workers and told me that they were going to kill everybody inside of the business. I swear to God, this has happened. So, and that's because of my status on YouTube during a certain bracket, very popular. I would have, I don't know, 80 to 100 people a day would show up in my business and looking for me specifically, whether it's to shake my hand or cut it off. But either way, I had somebody that was life threatening. And when you put yourself in that field, whether it is on YouTube, whether it is on a game, you are now accepting all the responsibilities of that, and that's including Snowden, right? That's everybody. If you're on the internet or on a game that is multiplayer. Now, if you're playing PlayStation on a sideline, no, you want to be anonymous, that's fine. But if you're going to talk shit, there's no report. It's show driver's license. Yeah, your crimes would go up, but guess what? People would be able to play their game silently.